And hey, Zach, what's up?
Hey Isaac, not
I
too
also
much.
just realized for the few people who are here, we were not muted. So the entire time that it was loading in, we were just talking. So good thing, I
That's
guess, we
great.
weren't talking about
That's
anything
great.
top secret. But fun little preview for the people that were here early. So yeah, I guess just give a little intro about yourself, and then we can just get into the fun little interview.
Yeah, I'm Zach. I do freelance 3D and also do some photography. So I've been bouncing back and forth between a few different things for a little while now. And yeah, I've been a longtime viewer of Isaac, a fan of his stream and his work. And yeah, honored to be here.
Yeah, we
Really
were
happy
just
to be
talking
here.
about the first time that we met. We met at a Houdini meetup when I was in LA for SIGGRAPH. Um, and like, yeah, just ever since then, it was just like, wow, you do cool stuff. And then we just like, it's been like internet friends ever since after that, just like one little happenstance meetup, which has been really cool to like
Yeah.
see all the stuff that you do and that you've been obviously very supportive of the stream and stuff, which is, it's kind of hard like starting a stream from scratch, but then like when there's like at least one person that's not my wife that's like watching the streams, it's like, oh nice, like somebody actually cares about it, which is fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think overall it's just been like I've been I mean, I guess shocked, yeah, but also like pleasantly surprised at how supportive the community is. Like, it's
Yeah,
just a bunch of sweethearts.
right, yeah,
Everyone's
people
so
are
nice.
very nice. I remember putting out like my first tutorial and I was like, worried that it would just be like, YouTube is very unpredictable in the feedback that you receive. But everyone's just like, wow, this is super helpful. And like, even to this day, like I have files up in my site that people like message me and they're like, I come here again to like download this when I forget like how to do this thing. It's like people are like genuinely really nice in this community, which I don't think is a thing in most other, like, I think it's like a very rare case.
Yeah, seemingly. It's been a pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
It's
Because you
very
put out a couple
supportive.
tutorials like here and there from like really cool things. Like you did like a caustics one like not too long ago, which was like really interesting. So what was your kind of experience with that stuff? I mean, I was assuming
Oh,
like very positive. Were you like
super
nervous at
positive.
all when you like first put it out and you were like, I don't know what the reaction's going to be?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had no idea, but I thought, oh, I could give this a shot. And like, I
Hmm.
thought, there's some cool stuff that I'm messing around with and thought, oh, I
Yeah.
could try to maybe share this and see
Right.
if anyone finds this useful. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's overwhelmingly like positive. Everyone's super nice.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
was I underestimated how grueling it is to make a tutorial. I always thought like, oh, you just like, record it, put up the stuff, and then like the first time I heard like the dialogue of like what I was saying is like, oh, I'm gonna have to like redo this whole thing. Like it just doesn't make sense. I'm just like kind of like mumbling the whole time, like not really being
Yeah.
concise, and you're like, oh, I kind of have to like write a script for this and like be really to the point. It's not just like share your screen, record your audio, and you're like good to go.
I think there are people that are really good at it. I am
Hmm.
not one of those people. The amount of
No,
editing
I
that
mean,
I have to do
yeah.
is
Oh, yeah.
intense.
Hmm.
Like how many ums and
Right.
long,
Yeah.
strange pauses I'm removing, and where I'm just staring at the screen like, what am I
Hmm.
doing? Where am I? What am
Right.
I? And then okay, like 6 minutes have gone by and I have to edit that out.
Right.
It's
Yeah. I mean,
just
it
terrible.
lots of hidden cuts. I even had to like go through my own file and like make notes for myself to like guide myself through something I built. Where you're like, what was it? Because when you're doing it, you're like, oh yeah, you like try 1,000 things, and you're like, oh, this thing
Yeah.
works. And then you go to the next one. Then you're trying to like remember why you put this one thing to like 0.01 versus the default of 0.1. You're like, well, I don't know why, but it works. Just go and do the next step.
Yeah,
It's
exactly. I
yeah,
just feel like I'm not, yeah, there's things where I'm just not super helpful where I'm like, I don't know,
yeah.
something, some reason
It
back
works
then.
and just
Yeah.
continue on from there.
Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
cool. So maybe we start with like how you got into, because you said like photographer. I noticed in your Instagram bio it says like exhibition is crossed out. Like, did you do that previously? Like, how did you kind of get into the space?
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. I have been messing around with, I mean, so I'm much older than you. So I've been like, this is like the 90s when,
Hmm.
like when I first started getting into this, back when it was like MS DOS. You had to load
Okay.
in like 3D Max into DOS and like do things that way. But I've been messing around with 3D forever. I'm super fascinated with it, from like a pretty young age, and just sort of like did some here and there, like in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And then got more into art and photography and went to Ohio State. And one of the reasons I went to Ohio State was they had one of the first art and technology programs, and that was really appealing to me because I thought, wow, this is great. Like I'll do like computer stuff, and
Hmm.
I'm gonna work on the next ILM masterpiece and be in that industry. And
Yeah.
when I got into college, I really focused more on I did some of that. I did like the 3D stuff for a little while and other things that were in the art and tech department, but I really gravitated more towards painting and drawing and photography
Mm.
at the time. And I kind of shifted away from it for a little while, and focused more on art. And eventually found myself at a contemporary art center in Columbus and worked as an art handler and
Mm.
preparator in the galleries. And then, yeah, just stayed there for a little while and worked my way up to exhibition designer. So just really helping artists fabricate and install their vision in the galleries. And I did that for a few years before I moved out to Los Angeles, and just kind of left that behind and shifted more towards photography and 3D.
Cool. Are you from Ohio?
Yeah, yeah. I grew up in a suburb of Cleveland and
Okay, yeah,
stayed
so I'm
there
from
for a
Michigan,
while.
so right above. Sort of
Yeah,
rivals in most sporting events, I guess, then too.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I learned. I didn't know that,
Mm.
but going into learn that in at my
At
time at
school.
OSU.
Yeah.
But yeah, right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Yeah, kind of. I mean, I was kind of in those circles of people. You just go to art school and like I don't know if the same when you went, but they make you do basics. So it's like you have to take a drawing class. You have to take like a color theory class. You have to take art history, like those sorts of
Yeah.
things. So you're like, even later down the road, you get to specialize in whatever you wanted to do. But like, it was always fun to like, be in the class with like the sculpting and like fine art painting kids. And you're like, oh wow, that's like very different. And then I did a lot of videography like for the school, so like I was in the
Mm.
in the galleries all the time, like filming people like you that were setting up and like helping with the installations in the gallery and moving stuff all the time. um
Just to document that, like for
yeah,
the gallery.
we have, I don't know if you know, it's like Art Prize, which is like the big event in like our town of Grand Rapids, where like people come in from like all over the like country to like do these installations. People vote, people win like big prizes on it. So our school hosted like a couple of those people, and they would like be able to put it wherever they wanted on the school grounds, which is like
Oh,
in the middle
nice.
of the city. So yeah, we would like record interviews with the people, like the artists, like do little, you know, vignettes and stuff on their work, and then like them installing it. So like, for a good like chunk there, we would be like filming in there like for a whole month, and it was like really fun to like be around those people, which is, hands on versus the very digital
Yeah.
people that is like very dark on that floor and like just Cintiqs everywhere. And so
Right.
yeah, that was
Yeah.
always really fun. So like, what pulled you to that versus like the track that you were like, was it like the physical nature of it and like the more like concepting and like thought provoking stuff behind it versus digital art that's kind of like, digital and like some people have a harder time connecting to and stuff?
Yeah, it's at the time there I was still sort of playing with these things. I still like just for
Mm-hmm.
my own
Curiosity,
enjoyment.
yeah.
Yeah, I would still do like 3D stuff, but I was really into, so I did a big focus in my undergrad for in art history,
Oh,
focused
cool.
around contemporary art, and I just
Mm.
got really, really into it and loved just seeing going to galleries and like taking a trip to New York and just looking at like what was going on at the time, and then
Mm-hmm.
being able to then work with the artists, like up and coming artists or more established artists in that space, was really exciting. And for a while, we had a curator there that would really embrace the sort of experimental nature of the space. So there would
Mm.
artists would come in and create something completely new specifically for the galleries. So
Oh, cool.
it was a really fun exercise in problem solving, where the
Mm.
artist would be like, I want to do this thing, I think
Right.
it's impossible, and it's like, it seems impossible.
Mm-hmm.
We'll meet again tomorrow and try to figure
Right.
this out. So that was really exciting to me, that like problem solving nature. And after a while, just from changes in things, what ended up happening was we would get more and more shows that were just traveling shows. We would be
Mm.
installing paintings, and so
Right.
that like sort of collaborative effort was starting to go down in frequency. We were getting more and more
Mm-hmm.
traveling shows, and so for a while, I mean, it's still interesting, but after a while, it just becomes a little bit more monotonous. We're
Yeah.
just kind of hanging paintings again, and things were getting a little bit less interesting for me. So I, you know, I in I was there and I met my girlfriend at the time, and she's from LA. So
Hmm.
there was an opportunity. She had to come back. She works in the film industry.
Okay.
And so there was this pull for her to return to LA to continue working. And it was at
Hmm.
that point where I'm like, I think I'm ready for a change,
Right.
and just decided I'm going to move to LA and try the whole freelance thing.
Pretty big
And
change from Ohio to LA.
it's a big change.
Yeah.
What's interesting? I'd never even been to LA before I
Oh
moved. I
wow, that's
packed up a
crazy.
van and just
Hmm.
drove across the country and was like, all right, I'm in LA now. And luckily,
Yeah.
I do love it.
Hmm.
So lucked out there. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just a big change. But I'm really happy I did it. It's been a great experience here, like moving to freelance and then focusing more on 3D and
Hmm.
photography. And luckily, I still do. Um, in Los Angeles, the photography that I do is art documentation and some cultural heritage photography. So I'm in the galleries quite a bit,
Oh, cool.
documenting
Yeah.
art exhibitions here. So I still am
Hmm.
kind of like in that world a little bit, and
Yeah.
it sort of, I guess, satisfies that element still. So I'm
Right.
still around that
Do you
stuff.
think like having a photography background and like even art installation like helps with composition? I would assume like being able to like know how to balance things, which would be a lot of like hanging paintings and stuff sometimes, but also just like the use of an actual camera, like actual subjects and stuff, transferring into like 3D.
I mean, I think potentially, yeah. There are some things where having that experience, I especially with photography into 3D, there's so many overlaps, and I think the overlap is getting much greater now. A lot of the like third-party renderers are using like real-world photography, terms and settings.
Mm-hmm.
So, and lighting and things like that. Area lights are really like soft boxes, and so having that like real world experience, I definitely think helps with 3D. As far as composition goes, I think it can. I don't know if I've ever really thought about it, but I think after a while you start to just get a sense of like pointing your camera at something and
Right.
just getting that like an innate sense of
Mm-hmm.
like where to place things.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, yeah, potentially that would because for a while I did wedding photography while I was
Okay.
still in
Yeah.
Ohio, and did that on the side. And that was something that was like, I'm really happy that I did it. It is chaotic and stressful
Yeah,
and
I can't
can be
imagine.
crazy. But just it was that thing again, like problem solving and having to think on your feet and just
Hmm.
try to like make it work in this seemingly very ugly room. And well, why are we here? Okay, we'll try to make this work. So
Hmm.
but having that sort of in the back pocket there, like when it comes time to set up a scene, I guess probably
Yeah.
informs the 3D work.
So I just realized that the Zoom is gonna run out because I had it running to set up stuff. So we're gonna have to like in
Oh my
six,
god!
8 minutes, like do a switcheroo. I'll resend you a link and we can
Or we
start it
just
up
talk
again.
super fast
No, no,
and try
no,
to squeeze it in.
no. We can. We've only been going for like 15 minutes here, so apologies for that. But
Yeah,
um,
no worries.
I quit my pro subscription because I was like, why do I have this anymore? Everyone else's like companies are sending me the Zoom links. I don't need this. Apparently, I do need this. So apologies for that. But we have 7 minutes, and then I'll do the switcheroo. Um,
All
but
right.
uh, I'm curious, like moving and then starting freelance, like feels like kind of like a hectic thing. Like I moved from like a full time job out here to do freelance like in New York from San Francisco, and it was like kind of this like buffer time of like it's once you're in freelance it's kind of easy to like get the ball rolling, but like jumping in while moving somewhere without having a job seems, at least for me, was like a little hectic, where I was like, this is the runway I have, and it just starts burning since you get there and you're like, God, I hope I get like a job to like start to replenish this runway. How was that like for you moving out? I mean, you had obviously your girlfriend, I assume there's like where you could stay, but you still had to like kind of start making an income once you moved.
Yeah, we were house sitting at the time. So this was sort of the what sparked this change was that
Mm.
she had a friend that did a set photography, and he
Okay.
was traveling back to, I forget where now, like Budapest or something,
Mm.
to shoot Blade Runner 2049. He was
Oh,
on the
cool.
original Blade Runner doing the set photography, and
Mm.
so he was going back there. So we had like 6 months of house sitting. So we were there, and so it was like, okay, in 6 months I think we can figure
Mm-hmm.
something out.
Yeah.
And so it was like a kind of a ticking clock, but
Mm-hmm.
luckily I had some other photographer friends, and I did some like wedding, like second shooting weddings,
Mm.
and sort of just bounced around and had like met some people and did like a couple little projects here and there with like some friends of hers that were already in the film industry. So it was
Okay.
just kind of like low budget things. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was definitely, I mean, I was sweating.
Yeah.
It was
It's a little
yeah,
intimidating, yeah. And then
but
how'd you like find, did you just like cold email some studios, or like how do you kind of break into, for like other people that might want to be doing, like how did you kind of go about like getting your foot in the door to sort of get to like more of the studio based things versus like kind of, you know, more indie like projects and stuff?
yeah, so that was very slow going for me.
Mm.
And it was really, so I was doing more photography at the beginning and just still, so I've been doing some freelance work in Ohio for a company, and that continued. So I had
Oh,
little
cool.
bits here and
Mm.
there. So I had this sort of carryover um 3D and like some After Effects and like some motion stuff that I was
Mm-hmm.
doing. So luckily I had that didn't go away. And I'd been working remotely
Mm.
with this company for a while. So just sort of like here and there I'd get projects. So it was just sort of enough to sustain me, luckily,
Right. Yeah.
while I found other things. But that, yeah, it's still like a really slow going thing. And I have to say that making tutorials was actually something that really propelled
Mm.
that sort of like people reaching out then.
Oh,
Like
cool. Yeah.
they found me through that, and it was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh hey, are you available to work? And it's like, yeah, I think so. We can
Yeah.
try to figure this out. But that's been one of the most interesting things, just how much that has helped. Just putting the like free tutorials out on YouTube has
Right.
been great experience
Has it
overall.
also been, I found sometimes just like having an Instagram with like stuff on it, people will just like DM, or like having your email in the profile, people will just like reach out through that to your email and just be like, hey, like we saw some of your work, hopefully you know how to make stuff like this and you didn't just follow a tutorial, would you like to, you know, are you available? And it's just like, oh wow, just having an Instagram is like kind of what you need to do these days, where you would
Yeah,
think, you know, a couple of years ago would be like a lot of emailing and like, you know, I guess hoping someone goes to your website sort of thing.
right. Yeah, I mean, Instagram for sure has helped, but I have to say, I'm not great at Instagram. I
Mm.
really don't care to like post a lot, and
Yeah.
I cannot bring myself to like try to make something specifically for
Mm.
an
Yeah.
Instagram post. There's that pressure, to like
Yeah.
create every day or like every week, and I
Mm-hmm.
just cannot bring myself to do it. So I'm really terrible at it. I should probably get it together and
I mean, you
get
seem
that
to be
going.
posting, you know, not every day, but like in a steady stream. I feel like that's the issue, is like I get, like before I did like daily sort of things, but it was like to learn Octane, or like to learn, it's easier when you're like kind of just getting like, you know, subsurface scattering is interesting, so you do like a single thing about that and you're like, oh, like doing this one thing, and you do a certain like thing about that, and it's like easy when like everything's new. And then once
Yeah,
you kind of like get in that like sort of groove of, you're like, I know how to set up a lot of this. Like if you can think of it and think of how to do it, it's a lot less interesting once you do it. Like you're like, oh, it's gonna take
exactly.
like a couple hours, but I know I could, so why?
Why
Unless
even go
it's like,
down
yeah,
that?
why? Unless it's really pulling you to make it. So yeah, there's
Yeah,
definitely that like fatigue after a while when nothing's really that new, and then you're
yeah.
just like, I do this for work. Do I want to keep doing this for after work too? And then like, is it just for Instagram? Like, there's definitely a lot of that now, which is a complex issue that comes with social media and art on social media and stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that's really interesting that you brought that up, because there is that sense of like, this is new. I want to figure this out. And there's that sense of excitement where
Hmm.
you're like, oh man, I cannot wait to dive back in. And then once that's gone, like you kind of get things figured out and you get a grasp of it. You're like, all right. Now
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Now
And you're just like,
what are we
cool.
learning?
And
Yeah.
then yeah, then obviously like something will come along. I feel like I'm very behind on learning all the new things. Like it seems like I'm on Twitter, I'm like, oh, that's a cool piece of software. Oh, that's a cool, like, wow, that's, you know, that does something that, you know, has been hard on me. I've gotten into Embergen, which is,
Oh, really?
yeah, and I was just shocked. I was like, I can't believe I fiddled around with this stuff in Houdini, where I was like barely grasping the concept of like what I wanted to do, and then this thing's like real time, and like obviously not all the control that Houdini provides with stuff, which is like infinite, but gets the
Yeah.
job done for like most of the stuff where cinema's not quite there. TFD is too clunky to like continue to use in
Yeah.
cinema, and it was a good in between. And with some licensing. It was, for me, it's just free. Like, comes with your Octane subscription and stuff. So definitely check
Yeah.
that out if you
Yeah,
were
I should look
interested.
into it. I've just started dipping my toe into Houdini, and it is
Mm,
it's an overwhelming and I mean, it's exciting
right.
because you realize that it's really limitless. Like whatever you
Hmm.
can think of, you can do, but it's also super intimidating. So I've been slowly trying to teach myself. Well, I mean, by that with the help of a lot of
Yeah.
great people that are willing to share their knowledge. So I've just been trying to catch those streams and those tutorials.
How'd you get into like cinema? Like you mentioned, like when you started, it was like all this like sort of older technology. Like, did you learn a lot of that at school? Was it like internet based learning, or like how'd you kind of transfer
Yeah,
into like what you're using now?
cinema was I believe I started using that right. Yeah, in that was it was cinema, and God, I'm blanking on the other name of this thing that has come and gone. It was terrible. It was like,
Light,
oh,
is
was
it
it
Lightwave?
Bryce?
Bryce, yeah, Bryce. You could do like planets and worlds,
Bryce.
but it was like
Yes.
really not anything else. Kind
So
of
strange. Yeah, it was like
very
really bizarre.
specific
Yeah,
software.
it was very specific. But yeah, like I remember, I mean, it was like I can't even remember what like the first version of cinema I was using, but this was way back. This was probably like
Before
early
double digits,
2000s.
yeah. So
Oh yeah. Yeah.
back in like
So
8, 7, 9 or something.
yeah, I mean, I graduated.
Oh damn. Well, there it goes. Start a new one. Get him back in. Whoop. Then this is very unprofessional. There we go. Hopefully we get him right back in. Apologies. But yeah, hopefully we get him right back in here and everything will get set up. Admit. Come on. It's loading. Loading. Connecting audio. Are we back? Connecting audio. It's connecting. I think I can hear you.
Hey, can you hear me?
Hey, and we're back. That was pretty
We're
fast. A little
back.
little pit stop and just change out the tires, and we're all good to go.
Should
So
have done
now,
a wardrobe change.
yeah, just be a completely different scene and setup.
Yeah.
But sorry, yeah, you were something about cinema when you first started the earlier versions, early 2000s.
Well, I graduated undergrad in 2004. So
Okay,
like that was so we were using whatever early
is
version
that
of
pre-MoGraph stuff? I know that that's kind of the big switch in people's heads. Was like there was no MoGraph in cinema, and then that was the big update. But I don't remember which one that was in.
It's interesting because by the end of like when I graduated 2004, I wasn't even really that it was at that time where I was like, I'm doing painting and drawing and
Yeah.
photography. I'm
Hmm.
like, I'm done with this stuff. I'm not
Okay.
gonna do it. So I don't even know. At the time, I had like kind of said goodbye to that stuff, and it'd been a little while when I was using it. And I honestly, it was like they were pretty basic. Like there was the art and tech program like covered a lot of bases in art and
Hmm.
technology, and there were only two like there was like 3D modeling and then 3D animation, and
Okay.
that was the extent. So it's really only
Yeah.
like two courses that did this. It was like like I did holography, I made holograms, I did a
Oh wow.
robotics course, and like there's just sort of like this sprinkling of different like areas in art and technology. And then I
Mm.
think the idea was that at the end you did like sort of your focus and like a self-initiated projects. And
Mm.
I chose to do all of those in painting, drawing, and
Yeah.
photography. So sort
Okay.
of like
You're like
just chose like
great
a different
knowledge, but I'm gonna
yeah,
go over here. Yeah.
right. Yeah. At the time I was like, I'm gonna move on to do some other things, which is super interested in like really sort of conceptual drawing and painting stuff and some sculpture. But
Yeah. I
yeah, it
can
was interesting.
only imagine that like it's the barrier to entry back then. Like even not that long ago. Like I don't know if I could have like kept with it either if I was like any bit earlier from like when I joined in, was because like it's just took so long to like you couldn't get as good an image as you could get now, so you'd be frustrated that you were like, I could just paint this like way better and it would like look how
Yeah.
I want it to look, and it's going to take 1,000 years to figure out in 3D how to do this, which I would assume would be frustrating. So I think that like we don't give enough credit to like people making Jurassic Park, which looks great, But at the time when you look at what they were looking at, you're like, how did you even imagine
Yeah.
that this would look the way it does when you're like looking at essentially like nothing and then you somehow make it. So I think
Yeah,
that
it was
it's
completely different world back then. Like you just had to wait. I remember, we would set these things to
yeah,
render
overnight,
overnight
and you're like,
in the
I hope
lab,
that
and you're like,
glossiness was at the right
this,
setting.
yeah, exactly. And then it's like, well, I have no other options.
Yeah,
That's it. This is my final project.
you
I
could get a
wonder what
little bit
it'll
of a
look like.
preview from like the GI cache, and if that looked wrong, you'd like stop it immediately and be like, that's not gonna like turn out correctly. And then you
This
just
was
go from
like,
there.
oh my God, the GI was brand new. This
Mm.
was like, yeah, like real excited. We have got global illumination. It looks
Ugh,
so real.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it's like back in the day. Yeah, it was just like, and there was too many other options. Like, there's a nice thing about going to Ohio State. There's just like all these other classes that were just like pulling me in all these different directions. Like I took glass blowing.
Oh wow.
There was a neon class. I made like
Neon
neon.
lights.
It was
Wow.
like, yeah, it was like, there's so many different things. Like, and all of it seemed interesting to me.
Yeah.
So it's just like really kind of like was just scattered
Hmm.
in all these different directions. So I just, yeah, it's just like I came back to 3D later on.
Kind of probably when it was more accessible, and you're like, you just like let it grow, and you're just like,
Yeah.
I'll come back when you guys figure out way better
Yeah.
UI and like
I'll come
all
back
the
when you're
science.
ready.
Yeah, when you
Yeah.
get all the science stuff figured out.
Yeah, right. I mean,
So
now it's just like blows my little kid brain, like
yeah,
how
you're just like, ugh.
much power is available right
Mhm.
now. It's crazy. Yeah.
So like when you came back, obviously very different from when you were learning it in school. So was it like some of the muscle memory was there where you're like, I understand the concepts, but like everything's moved around and there's new concepts now?
Yeah, you know what's weird is that I had kind of left it for so long. I felt like I had to relearn
Mm.
everything. Like it was just like, I mean, I did projects where I did like rigged up a skeleton and I had no idea. Like to this
Yeah.
day, I'm like, oh God, if
I mean, I
have to rig up
forget.
a
Like if I
character,
do it between months, I'm like, what is this again? How do
yeah,
I do this?
it doesn't stay with me. Like I'm not interested. I don't do like
Nope.
character rigging and animation.
Just
So it's
auto
like,
rig and get some
yeah,
mocap data, and you're like,
yeah.
that's good enough.
Or I'll call someone else to do it.
Yeah.
Like I'm not doing it. But yeah, it's just like I know way I had to do it and I did it, but no, it's just I have to redo it. And it was that time when it was like, Andrew Kramer with Video Copilot was out and
Hmm.
like, oh my God, like just got really into After Effects. And that's
Yeah.
sort of where, like, I mean, even like Grayscale Gorilla, like at the time, Nick Campbell had his stuff going on like pretty early on, and he did that Real Roulette. Do you remember Real Roulette?
I
Where it
do
was
not.
like, so this is way back. So Nick had this thing in this site where you could put your 3D reel, and I have a reel up from like 2008 that I made, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna try to do this. I'll try to get some like freelance work and try to get into this. I was kind of doing that like simultaneously while I was working at the galleries. So there'd be like periods of time when the gallery they were full. We weren't doing anything. So there was like we had all this downtime. So I was making these like little short 3D animations and put together a reel. And Nick had this thing, Real Roulette, and you could just like click a I guess like a spin, and you just get a random like 3D reel from somebody.
Oh, cool.
And
Interesting.
you could search by like area. But that's where I got my first like paid freelance gig was from that way back in the day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Seems like a good idea. I feel like that should still be around.
I wonder if I don't think it is, but I mean, I've checked. This was like, early 2000s.
Early.
I wonder
If this is still like where he was doing like Photoshop tutorials. I feel like that's like early Grayscale Gorillas, like pre-cinema, when it was just like really heavy into like photography and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, he was really doing that. I don't even think it was Grayscale Gorilla at the time. I don't know what it was. It may have been, but yeah, it's just like sort of he did like real reviews where you like submit and like he'll do like a critique. But yeah, like those, I mean, yeah, so like I feel like I learned a ton like after school, that it was just these people that were just sharing their knowledge online.
I mean, honestly, I think like, half the workforce wouldn't be here without like Andrew Kramer and Grayscale Gorilla, like just those two people having sites with like free to access tutorials. I mean, I wouldn't know anything, like would have taken me way longer. Like I feel like everyone that I have on here, at least in some capacity, like one way or another, used those sites. Less so if you were not in the US, obviously, because like there were other things in those languages to learn from. But yeah, it's crazy that like two people decide to do something, and then it's just like the amount of people that are connected directly to learning from there is like massive.
Yeah, I mean, what a huge resource. I just can't thank them enough. It's just such a huge, kind gesture to give to the community that and just built it up. And it's just like, what a great source of education. And that's just something that's really important to me. And that's, I kind of was like, well, I'll just see it. Like, I'll try to make some tutorials when I
Hmm.
can and try to do the same thing because it was so important to me and that
Right.
like helped me out so much. Just so
It's like
grateful for
kind of
that.
the like give back sort of mentality of like you learn from this, like give back without like, that's like my idea behind like freebies on my site. It's like, if I came up with this idea and it was like interesting, just put like the project file out. Is my like kind of like shortcut of like if I don't want to edit this whole video in a tutorial, just put the
Yeah.
file out. People can figure it out when they go in there. If it's I
Yeah.
try to clean it up, but like just throw it up there and people can like download it if they want, sort of thing. But yeah, I
Yeah.
think the give back is like kind of what keeps it like propelling. And like even just on Twitter and stuff, I find that like just quick tips or like those little things where people are always excited, like as soon as you figure something out, you want to tell someone else and be like,
Yeah.
look I figured this like little thing out. And just like the plethora of like free knowledge. And obviously there's lots of paid things which are valuable to be paid for, like they're
Oh, absolutely.
very
Yeah.
well like produced and stuff, but like I think the overwhelming amount of free stuff is like gets a lot of people over that little barrier of like entry, and then they can go wherever they want from there in the rabbit hole that is the 3D world.
Yeah. Yeah. And to me, that's just really exciting. Like that makes me happy that just like people are out there sharing these things and like building each other up and helping each other. And that's just yeah, I don't know. I think that's just kind of like the appeal so far, like getting back into it. It's like, wow, this is so nice. Everyone's so nice.
Yeah. This is very true. How did you
Yeah.
find kind of your like first, like did you have kind of the imposter syndrome of like first 3D gig like with a studio and stuff, or were you like totally calm with it and like, oh, I got this, like totally fine?
No, I'm never totally calm. I am like high anxiety
Yeah.
all the time. So I'm always worrying. No, it's always just like one of the things is just like I'm always nervous and I'm always like, can I do this? And
Mm.
it's just that question of like whether you move forward or not. Like,
Yep.
do you just push through this terrible anxiety and like all these doubts, or do you like keep it from your, let that keep you from doing something?
Right.
So I've always been trying to like push myself to like, all right, I'm just gonna jump in and figure it out and try
Hmm.
to like work through it. But that's always been something that I struggle with. But no, always absolutely nervous. Like no matter what, it's just like, oh god,
Yeah.
can I do this? Oh, I have
Right.
to figure it out. But no,
And then
I'm
just the
always
freelance aspect of it, of like jumping into new studios frequently where you're like, I don't know anyone here, like I hope these people are like good with like the work I'm doing, because like going back to a studio you've worked with before, you kind of like know the expectations and stuff, and like the
yeah,
people, and they'll be a little bit more like frank with you if it's like not getting to where they need it to. But like a new studio, you're
yeah,
like, do they hate it? Do they hate me? Do they want to
right,
fire me tomorrow? I have no
right,
idea. I hope that
yeah.
this is going well.
First day of school jitters all
Right,
the
every
time.
time,
Yeah,
frequently, like every
yeah,
2 weeks, every month, you're just like
yeah,
whole new job, which is insane. I think to most people, they don't really think about. They're like, oh, freelance is great, work for yourself, like
oh
your own hours, which is like, no, it's kind of just like a normal job, but way freakier because you're starting a new job every 2 weeks. It's like, oh yeah, I didn't
yeah,
think about that. Yeah.
yeah, there's that aspect of it, but it's also like what really surprised me, and I didn't know this when I went freelance, was like how guilty I felt when I wasn't working
Mm,
because it was always on me to do the work, and how much like I didn't have like a set boundary of like these are my work hours and these are
mm,
when I'm not working. And there's that thing that in the back of your mind, like, well, I could be working right now. I could be doing more.
yeah.
And should I be? And I don't know. And it's up to you. And when you're the one making those calls, it's easy to get like, I don't know, just to feel overwhelmed about like
Hmm.
how much there is to do. And so that was a big adjustment that I had no idea. That like completely blindsided me, that like,
Yeah.
oh man, like I really am having a hard time like turning off work.
Mm,
I don't know how to do that. So that was like one of the biggest adjustments, because I was so used to like clocking out for
yeah.
the day. And then that shift is something that was like, oh my God, I don't know what is it okay to relax? Can I watch a movie?
Right.
I don't know. Yeah,
Did
that
you
was the
do a lot
biggest
of
adjustment.
freelance in person, like in studios, or was a lot of it like remote, just you doing it from like your office home?
Most remote. I
Hmm.
mean, so it was the company that I worked for back in Ohio was I think I only went in there one time and was
Oh.
just remote, even though they were local. That was
Hmm.
just like didn't need to go in, and
Yeah,
I just
got
did
your own machine,
remote.
got your own stuff.
Yeah,
Doesn't make sense to like get you a desk and get all set up.
yeah, yeah. And I work, and like they were fine with me, like not taking a gig or taking a gig based on how busy I was. So there were
Mm.
times when I just didn't work for them. There was like a whole year that went by and I was just too busy with stuff at the art gallery where it was like,
Hmm.
no, I'm swamped. I can't do
Yeah.
this. But it was mostly remote. So I've mostly done remote work, and especially now with like COVID and everything,
Hmm.
everything's been remote.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I mean, how did you prefer? Like you've done both, right? Gone in and
Yeah.
sat at a desk. Do you have a
Um,
preference?
I don't know. I mean, obviously, I'm very inclined to remote just because, like, it's kind of that thing of like, you know your machine, you know where everything is. There's no like, it seems like you can go a lot faster. Whereas I constantly ran into like, you definitely get up and running in studio after like a week or so, but it's just like it's stiff and it feels kind of like just being in someone else's apartment and you're just like, I don't really like which drawer has which thing. Like you're constantly asking for stuff. They constantly don't have stuff you're used to having. And so like
Yeah.
it was kind of a novelty thing where you're like, this is fun. Like I'm in someone else's office. This is like, new people around. And that quickly faded off where I was just like, it's so much easier once you get like a couple remote gigs and you like get how it kind of works and like so much easier, so much better, and like the wide variety now that you have of like working with LA places, working with like places over here where it's not just local was
Yeah.
super great because like I work half the year with like places out in LA and it's really nice. I mean, the only thing is like the hour shift is like a little bit hard, and then you work it out with them of like so you're not staying up till 10 p.m. every night to do
Yeah.
like reviews with them at 7 p.m. over there. So like it's I prefer at home purely based on like the machine and working on my own machine and stuff. Obviously the trade-off is like the horrible amount of data transferring to them
Yeah.
is like grueling where you're like you forget a couple days and you're like, wow, this is like 100 gigabytes that I get to upload to their FTP. Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Or their Dropbox. So I definitely, and I have a dog, so if I when I do go in studio or when I did in the past, it was like he has to like have like a walk or like not as fun of a day, whereas like I'm at home, it's like take him out whenever I want. So that's a big factor too. So yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely prefer remote, and I think studios prefer remote. Like it's easy, you can have 10 freelancers and not have to have 10 new machines you put up, like it, and your
Yeah.
net for freelancers is bigger now too, so it's like a win-win for them as well. Like they're not limited to this little pool of people that can make their way into the office.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It seems so appealing from both
Hmm.
sides. But I mean,
And it's
it's almost,
digital, right? Like
yeah.
that's a big like my wife does fashion and like they need fittings, like they have to see how it looks on a person. Like you
Yeah.
can't really get that over Zoom. Makes total sense to like sometimes go in office, but like for us it's like this is, you're going to view it on a screen, everyone can see it on the screen.
Yeah.
Like we don't really need to have any other interaction about this.
Yeah. It'll be the same if I'm there or not.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, being in New York, though, I have to imagine that it could be nice. I mean, you like the proximity that you could be like traveling is pretty small, right? Like, do you
Yeah,
have like places
that's
where you're like down the street where you're like, I could walk over there and
um I mean, I live in Brooklyn, so like most of them are in Manhattan.
oh, okay, yeah,
I do get like a little stir crazy where I'll be like, hey, tonight we have to go into the city because like I've been in this vicinity for like a month and I need to go somewhere.
yeah,
So like you definitely, I do miss, like I like the commute like into the city. Like it was super fun. Like obviously I like big cities and it's like cool to just be in the like the hustle and bustle of like Soho or something. But that's like the, I guess, like one of the biggest pros. And then like being around other people in a like an office, like those were like the two pros, but like it was just totally outweighed by all the other things of working remote. Like
yeah,
it's just like I can go into the city like after work if I want to, and like same kind of thing, or like
yeah,
on the weekends. So yeah, I mean I definitely do miss those parts of it, but I like remote way more. What about you? And like I
yeah.
would assume LA is like a little bit more spread out. It seemed that
Oh
way
yeah,
when I was there. It's like
Yeah.
nothing's walkable. It's all like drive on a highway.
It can be. I feel
Mm,
like if you could make it more walkable than it seems outwardly, like it seems very unwalkable, but
mm,
it can do some things. But it's not. I mean, usually you're just driving
right.
forever,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's just not. It's not appealing. Like I don't. I'm not like, oh man, I want to work remote here in LA. It'd be like, oh God, no. The commute then would be like be adding like an hour and a half
Yeah.
potentially to my
That's
day of
crazy.
just
Yeah.
nothing. So, I mean, I don't, I'm not like looking forward to any of that. I'd much
That's the
rather
crazy
work
thing
remote.
too for commuting here. It's like same like tiny distance, still 40 minutes to get in. It's like, how
Yeah.
is that possible? Like
Yeah.
that's the other part of, yeah, you'd leave, my wife gets off at like 5:30, like a normal job, and it's like for some reason our jobs decided that 9 to 5 is not a thing, and you get off at 7, then you get the 40-minute commute home, and you're like, I'm home by like 8:30. You're like,
Yeah.
I have
It's
no
brutal.
nighttime, and then you go to bed to like get up again and do the early commute because it takes 40 minutes, and you have to be there at like 9. And you're like, I'm
Yeah.
just commuting and being away from my house and then sleeping. Like I sleep here. Like I pay the most money to just sleep at this one like little
Yeah.
place. So,
That is, I feel like in general, where people that like in other like types of work where, I mean, we're kind of used to like sort of remote freelance, but people that are used to like office jobs got this sort of glimpse into this world of like remote work.
mhm,
And I'm like, people in my family, like my brother-in-law, just like they've gone completely remote and now he has like way more time. He spends time with his kids and
mhm,
he's able to like do much more. And
right,
I'm really happy for him. But it's like, I mean, that's a tough thing when we have to commute so many hours in a day. That's a big chunk of time that you're just pushing into like just sitting and doing nothing,
mhm,
completely unproductive time.
yeah,
It's like audiobooks. What are you going to do?
right,
Podcasts? I mean, how do you make that worthwhile? So yeah, that's a tough one. Yeah, I don't look forward to that sort of thing like this
mhm,
commute in. I'm
yeah,
really liking the remote work.
right, yeah. I mean, the only place where that was kind of worked was like I worked at Google and they had a bus and it had Wi-Fi on it. So essentially your whole commute you were kind of working and like it counted towards your work hours. So like by the time that you scanned your badge to like get on the bus, that was your working time. Like that's when you got into the office. You'd get off, you'd go to work. So you'd go home at like 4 because you're like, well, I'm gonna work for another 40 minutes when I get home. Then I'm like essentially off at 5, and that's where I was like, I don't think it's practical, but like if everyone could get that sort of setup where it's like your commute is like you're clocked in working or not if you don't want to, but I was like that'd be so much better. Like I think
Yeah.
so many people would be okay with it because you get like an hour and a half back that they're not paying you for normally of the commute. um
So wait a minute. A Google bus
yeah.
picked you up. Like, where did you have to live in a certain
They have
area?
they have a lot of pickup spots. I mean,
Wow.
it was a big thing in San Francisco. Like the local people absolutely hated it because it kind of destroyed like the bus system because like they were pickups at pickup spots like normal buses, but like they were just Google ones.
Oh my
And then
God.
yeah,
I had
you'd
no
kind of just
idea.
like go up to a bus stop and like get taken to your office, and like they had different routes to different offices, and then you have a scheduled time of like these are when the buses are leaving, and like better get on one of these if you want to go home. And so then you just like kind of
Wow.
schedule your going home on like what bus was happening. So I'd go get dinner at like the campus across the street, and then I'd go hop on the bus and like take the last one home. And so yeah, it was ideal. That was the best setup for a gig
Yeah.
ever.
Just public transportation with Wi-Fi on
Yeah,
the clock.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was like kind of one of those mega buses. So like you could
Oh yeah.
yeah, so it was just like nice seats. You had like a little tray to like work on your laptop and like outlets and stuff. So yeah, it was super nice. It was like a big plus to working there. I'd definitely do it again.
Wow. And so how long were you there? How long were you in?
Six
Like,
months. So
okay.
I was a contractor, and so one of my roommates in college, kind of when he went out, he graduated early and like had a full time job because he interned there, and then like kind of like a month before we were graduating, he's like, "Hey, we have like a contractor position open for a motion designer. You could probably get it if you just like interviewed." And I was like, "Okay, yeah." My goal was just to go to New York and like freelance, and I was like, "That's what I'm gonna do." But I was like, "Okay, I can go to San Francisco and like." Google's a great start to a resume. And so
Absolutely.
just went out
Yeah.
there, and Yeah, it
Started
was
at the
super
top.
nice. Yeah, just kept tanking from there, and so
Yeah,
it's all been
right.
downhill,
It's
just
all the way
coasting.
downhill.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
no, but yeah, it was great. I just nothing finished there. Like they're so massive that like budgets aren't a thing and like timelines aren't a thing. Like we're not doing anything like time sensitive. It was all just like concepts and pitching for stuff and like being in meetings half
Yeah.
the day. And I was like, this is fun and very cushy, and would be great to like transfer to full time, but just like kind of had that itch to like I would love to ship something or like see something out in the wild.
Yeah.
So kind of just like after my contract was up, they were like, do you want to renew? And I was like, I'm gonna go to New York and be with my girlfriend, now wife, and
Yeah.
freelance out there. So yeah, it was I would advise anyone that has the opportunity to contract at Google to definitely do it. It's very
Wow.
nice. But
Yeah, but it's got to be tough though to work in such a huge team to then not like see an end goal met. Like
yeah,
that would
that
be
was yeah. It
tiring.
was like the great part was our team was like a small team inside of Google, so it was like it was a company that was actually acquired, like, and so I was working on essentially like a company in a company kind of thing, and the stuff we were working on was really cool, like automated YouTube ads. So like we were building After Effects files that hooked up to like Google Sheets that like took in data real time and like re-rendered new stuff to like
Oh,
translate stuff. But it was one file, and like new images, like gore couldn't be shown in China, so like when we showed that ad, images were swapped and like it responsively like adjusted the composition. So really cool stuff, but like didn't really go anywhere, and it was like, yeah, that will be great in like 2 years, maybe we'll start shit. I was like, 2 years? Like, oh my god, this is insane. This timeline is just like so relaxed and like so
whoa.
much concepting where you're like, this is really cool, but also like I'm used to like the kind of more freelance, like this will be done in a month, 2 months maybe, and like if it's a big project, maybe 6 months, and you're like, cool, that's awesome to like see it out there and be like, yeah, that's awesome that it like shipped and see it in the wild. But
Yeah.
yeah, a little bit hard. It takes, I think it's more of like a down the road. If you want to get like a nice cozy in job and just like ride off into the sunset, I would definitely
Yeah.
try to get to Google. That would be like the great place to like sit and do that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I
It's
was
like a
like
nice
too young
retirement
for it.
plan.
Yeah, I was just
It's
like,
like maybe in your 80s, just go
yeah,
work for
I was
Google.
just like 21. I was like, I'm antsy to like get my fingers in everything and like do stuff. So yeah, it was
Yeah.
definitely, and it's kind of Google. So like, there's no way you're gonna like work on any other brand while you're there. Like you're very
Yeah.
locked into the work you're gonna get, and the look you're gonna do is like already set in stone. So it's like not a lot of concepting on like inspo. You're just like, it looks like how we do stuff. It's how it's gonna
Yeah.
look, and you're like, okay, yeah. So not much, you know, outside of that spectrum, but
Yeah.
yeah, it was fun. Yeah, it was
That'd
nice.
be tough. That'd be tough to stick with for a while, I think. Because I'm so
Yeah.
drawn to like changing it up and doing something
Hmm.
new.
Right.
That would be, yeah, that would be pretty rough
Yeah.
after a while.
Yeah. My second like full-time job was like at an ad agency, and that was the reason that I like went freelance from that, was like still too much commitment to like, we're not going to get movie titles, we're gonna do rebrands and like social posts, like we're just, and you can't fault the studio, you're like, I just have to be freelance, like that's just, I'm
Yeah.
too inconsistent in like what I want to like do. So it's like you want to like swing to like maybe doing a brand but then going to do movie titles, like you just want that full spectrum. Is that
Yeah,
kind of why you've
exactly.
stuck with it? Like have you been like talking to places about like full time, and then like always just been like, I'm just, my heart's with freelancing and like the wide net I can cast?
Yeah, exactly. I just
Hmm.
feel like I love the changing up of what I'm working on and just not getting, I feel like things can get monotonous very quickly. And
Hmm.
so I do like to bounce around a lot and like try new things. And it's nice to be like, even within the realm of 3D, it's like, wow, I've done this project, these are very different projects. And it's like, you know what, I'm gonna step away from my computer for a while. I'm gonna go like take some photos.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, now when I come back, I feel like refreshed. It's
Right.
just like a nice change of pace. So I worry that like taking a freelance or a full-time job over freelance would like become monotonous, and I just start to like get bored or not like it as
Right.
much. It's a Yeah. So I mean, I've been lucky in like the ability to sort of bounce around and take
Hmm.
on different projects, but that's the draw. Like I always want some like new thing where it's like I, I always like I'm always hopeful where I'm going to be in a project be like, ooh, not sure how to do that. Like
Mm,
that's the ideal position to
right.
start from, because then it's like, all right, well, let's get to work, let's figure this
Hmm.
out. And like, and hopefully like the ideal situation is just like a pretty small team
Right.
of people that are like trying to like
Hmm.
solve a problem. Like that's my favorite thing, is to work with like a team of people, and like we're all just trying to like figure out this problem,
Right.
and we can just work together and figure this out. So that's like, if we can do that, if I could just do that and just bounce around and
Right.
just switch it up, that'd be
Hmm.
the best thing. I would do
Yeah.
that
I
forever.
mean, yeah, I've found it hard to like find a title for like what I like to do, because it like it's spreads so much stuff, and you're like, kind of at the end of the day, it's just like, yeah, creative problem solving. Like,
Yeah.
it's like I say a lot, like I'm not smart enough to like be an engineer or like an inventor, but in this like very small specific space, you kind of get that like itch scratch. You're like in this weird digital area, and like you can kind of be like a physicist in like Houdini and be like, these gravitational things and like this force should do this, and like you kind of get a little bit of coding where you're like doing some stuff, and like in a very small way you feel like you're inventing stuff, and like, hitting
Yeah.
eureka moments, like very small scale. And like, yeah, that's just the best part of it, when like you're on a team and it's like, we gotta figure out how to do this, and you're like, I don't really know, but like I'm sure I could Google my way into figuring it out. And then like it's
Yeah.
like, oh, we did it, like we actually figured it out. And like, you know it always is kind of fun to like be like the not on the specialty thing. Like I've worked on stuff where it's like you're doing your shot and it's like, cool, now give that to like the flame artist, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Like that someone else finishes it, and it's like, we're gonna have an explosion, but we'll just get the Houdini guys in here to do it. And you're like, okay. Like you kind of want the
Yeah.
opportunity to like figure stuff out, and you're like, yeah, but they're specialists, and like it's done in like a day, and you're like, yeah, they did a really good job. Okay, yeah, I can see why I wasn't allowed to futz around for like a week to figure it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely fun, like small teams where you're like a little bit of the underdogs, like hopefully we can get it done, but we don't really know if we can. Kind of
Yeah.
mentality is like super fun.
Yeah. That is what I'm just drawn to that. I love that sort of that atmosphere, and just like trying to problem solve and figure it out. So that's, I mean, that's what I'm always like looking for and what I'm drawn to. So that's yeah, been lucky enough to kind of do that, and been doing that for a little while now.
Cool. Yeah. So I think we're close on time. So one, I always ask people, what is like your Mount Everest thing to work on? Obviously you're like really happy with the stuff you're doing, but like, is there one project out there where you're like, if I could just like, I've always wanted to do that one or something?
Oh man, that is such a tough question for me, because I feel like it would be the thing that I don't know about yet.
Right.
It'd be like a
Okay. Yeah.
brand new thing. Like what, like this is like a, hey, like maybe someone I know, like a friend that's
Mm,
like, hey, we've got this like thing. It kind of seems like we're not going to be able to do this, like a project or something where I'm brought in to help figure something out.
right.
And it would be like, all right, well, let's try to figure this out. Like it
Hmm.
hasn't been done yet.
Right.
And so like that would be the thing, like this sort of unknown thing, and just jumping in and having to start from scratch. Like that would be
Cool.
a
Yeah.
very appealing
Right.
project to
Not
work on.
something that's been done a lot, and like there's stuff to like compare it to. It's like brand new, like early days, just starting out and like going into the great
Yeah.
beyond, just
Yeah.
exploring, being
Right.
an explorer. Yeah.
Yeah. Trying something brand new, and like really like working with a like a small team of people to try to figure it out and
It's kind of,
get this new project
it's
out.
like early day ILM, like just didn't exist. And you're like,
Yeah.
guess we're inventing everything. Guess that's how
Oh,
we're going to get it done. Like I love like, Empire of Dreams, I think is the documentary on like the whole expanse of Star Wars, but like they go deep. And actually, on the 27th, there's a whole documentary about ILM coming to Disney Plus that I'm
yeah.
super excited about. Of just
Yeah.
like
Me too. I saw that.
a bunch of art
Just
kids that were just
scrappy.
like
Yeah.
hippy dippies. I mean, my favorite thing is that um, the studio like sent people to ILM in their like warehouse, and they were like, they hadn't produced a shot in like 6 months, and they're like, can you even do this? Are you working, you bunch of hippy dippy artists? And they're like, I think we got it, just give us like another month. And so they like had people from the studio there to like manage them and make sure they were actually working and not just like slacking off. And they're like, no, really, we're inventing stuff from scratch, like give us time to
Yeah.
invent how to do this thing. Obviously it worked out well, but like, yeah, people think that it was like a well-oiled machine, but it's just a bunch of art kids that were like handpicked to like, I'm not even handpicked, like flyers up, and they're like, yeah, I would love, I'm like a
Yeah.
architect, I would love to work on sets, kind of thing, and they just figured it out.
Be the best, like
Yeah.
that, to be in that like group of like, yeah, like people that are just not, it's like completely undefined,
Mm-hmm.
We want to do this. And it's like, all
Yeah.
right, let's figure out how we're going to make this happen. That's like, yeah, dream come true. And those were so, watching those documentaries, like being a kid and watching like HBO, like the little
Mm.
behind the scenes things
Right.
they used to have was just like such a huge influence on me. Like that was like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you remember do you remember the old HBO, like where they did like a fly through of a miniature city
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that like,
Well,
and
I
that like,
was at Imaginary Forces when they redid it into like the new one with like the big HBO, and like they had like the recreation
yeah,
of it. I had never seen the original one, but I was like, oh wow, yeah, no, they had this
yeah,
whole like miniature that they did and stuff. So
yeah.
that was like really cool.
Yeah, just for the like, I mean, for what? For nothing.
No,
Like just for
yeah,
the show,
it's just
like
like a
just for like
logo
HBO.
sting and
Yeah,
like
it's
yeah.
like it's like who cares? But they like went in and like, hey, let's do this whole magical
Mm-hmm.
miniature thing. And like they had a little like behind the scenes of them making it, and I was completely enthralled with
Yeah.
them. Just like could not. I was like, yeah, that's amazing. Look at them
Mm-hmm.
go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this was amazing. Thank you so much for being on here. Um, but yeah, I think that, it's just so interesting to see how different people take their routes to this, and like your sort of thing of like, fine arts and like how you gravitated towards it. I think it just brings everyone's unique perspective to it. And I think that that's the coolest part about like, especially this medium of like 3D. It's like a lot of people just get sucked in so many different routes, and there's so many different ways to go out from it. Like once you get the base, like again, it's kind of like this like vortex, and then like expands again out from it. It's like a whole nother like medium inside a medium. It's so cool.
Yeah, yeah. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's exciting to see what everyone's working on and what new things are going to be created. And I'm just like blown away by the community and like the work that's being done out there. It's just like unbelievable.
Cool.
But yeah, thank you so much, Isaac, for having me on. It's been a
Yeah,
pleasure.
everyone go follow Zach if you don't already. His handle is over there. Yeah, got a point to it on the screen over there. So yeah, thank you so much. Have everyone have a good day, and I'll see you next month. We'll have another stream. Bye.
Thanks, Isaac.